All right, so to practice some of the concepts that we introduced yesterday, where we have a component that is no longer maintaining its own state. Instead, it's delegating the state handling by a Redux store, right? Instead of looking at a generic, trivial example like yesterday, let's just go step it up a little bit, not too much, just so that we understand the concepts. Again, a lot of it is very simple, right? It's when you need to make it more scale to larger applications when it starts to get a little bit more complicated, right? So let's look at the simple case, right? And then we'll scale it up. So let's look at the implementing a React Redux counter. So let's first create the application. So let's go in webdev. Let's go into lectures, and let's create React app, and we'll call it simple. What do I call it here? Simple React Redux counter. All right, so let's open it up with our favorite IDE. Let's see, open, and let's go into webdev. No, that's not what I meant to do. It's loading all my projects now. Stop it. Close project. Open. Let's go into webdev, and let's navigate under there. Let's go to lectures, and here's my simple React Redux counter. All right, that's still building. So we'll create something like this, right? Just the value of a counter and 2 buttons, right? So this will cause us have to deal with event handlers, right? Of buttons generating this dispatch actions, one to add, one to subtract, and then delegating the handling of the state to the Redux store. The store will maintain some value, a single value, and somehow we need to feed that back into the state of the component, right? So the component will have 3 properties, right? One is the actual value is going to be fed from outside, and it's going to have 2 event handlers that are going to leave the component, right? And going to notify the store through dispatchers, right? So let's create the basic component. Let's see if this is done. All right, it's done. All right, if we go in there and we do an npm start, it should start our little application. Oh, I believe I might have another application running at the same port. So let's run it again. Okay, there's our basic boilerplate React application. We're going to blow it away just to show how to start from scratch. And let's create an index page, our entry point, and let's load some of the libraries that we're going to need, some of the components we need. So we're going to import React. You always have to import React. And what is completing? Let's save that, and we'll also need to import React DOM. Why is my IDE not? Import declaration or import current version. Okay, usually it tells me if I want to change to JSX. Preferences, and appearance, editor, general, emit language, no, intention, live, code style, JavaScript, there's JSX. Can't find JSX. Let me close this. Let me close it and open it up again. Let's see. Close project. Simple counter. Still. Well, let me see if it still should work. Let's see. Let's do React DOM render. And let's. This is a counter. There it is. So we're going to switch. It detected this as JSX. So I'm going to say switch over. OK, now it understands it. All right, so and we're going to render it in a element, get element by ID, call root. Right. So if we re-render that, let's see where. There it is. So it's up and working. Right. So we have the counter. OK, so let's create a little component that can handle can render the counter. Let's see, we can create a new component. Now, remember that there's two types of components, the stateful component that has a constructor, has all those. We're not going to be using those, right? Instead, we're going to be using the stateless components because they're not going to be maintaining any state, right? Instead, they're going to be delegated to the Redux store. So here's our counter component. And here, it would return the rendering, right? Typically, you would say something like this, and this would be parentheses. Something like that, right? And then you can replace this with counter, and that still renders as counter. Now, this new syntax of the arrow function, if you're just returning something, right, you don't have actual steps that you're calculating anything, there's a syntactic sugar for this, right, where if it's just returning something, you don't even need to have the return function, return statement, return statement. You can just say like that, right, and that's understood as just returning. Immediately, whatever you give it, it evaluates to that, and you can just return it. Right? So it's part of the new JavaScript syntax, which is pretty cool. All right, so the counter might have might be maybe an h1, a div here, right, where we might have a counter here, and then we can maybe put a value for that counter. Maybe have a value here. And maybe a button with a plus and a button with a minus. All right, so if that, notice that it doesn't know about the value, but that could be an argument that gets passed in, right? Which right now has no value, but we can feed it from outside as an attribute. We can say counter equals 0. 0? No. Counter. Oh, value. I'm sorry. Okay, so we're feeding the value 0, and or whatever value we put it injects it as 1. Yes, makes sense. So we want to be able to modify that counter there. And instead of being passed in by an attribute, it should get all that value from the store instead. Yes, and when we do the plus and minus, we want to notify the store, right, that all these actions have occurred, and to update the value, the state, to something else. All right, so let's what we can do is now. Let's feed it that value from the store. We don't have a store, but let's create a new store. Let's say we can create an initial value, an initial state. So initial state might be some object that says that the value is say 10, and we want to feed it into it from the store. Okay. So let's create a store, and we'll say we'll say let store equal create store. And for the store, we need a reducer. We don't have a reducer, so let's create. Let's load a couple things here. So we'll need this. We'll need a create store. So create store, and that's from. Oh, we don't have Redux. We need to install all that, right? Let's install Redux. Let me stop this for a second, and we'll do an npm install Redux, and don't forget to do a save. So it's going to install Redux. And we'll also have to install Redux, React Redux, right? Because React all by itself is a library that can be used across multiple front-end frameworks, right? Not only React. So here's the base implementation of Redux. And then we need to install the React Redux that creates a whole bunch of hooks that allow it to interact with the Redux library. Okay. All right, come on. So installing React. Let's. I think you already installed Redux, so we can load Redux now, right? So let's import the create store. That's from Redux. Okay, and the store needs to be fed into the application that wants to receive the data, right? And that's as part of the a provider. We'll need a provider. And this is the glue between Redux and the React world, right? So this is going to be loaded from another library. That's the React Redux library. This is what glues the generic Redux library that maintains the state, maintains the reducers and whatnot, and glues it to a React application. So here we have a provider, and we need to feed it the store, right? So we need to say store equal the store. Okay? But the store needs to be the store is being acted upon by the reducer. The reducer is the one that puts the state in the store, right? Generates new versions of the state as it interacts with the application. So the create store takes as argument a reducer, somebody who generates these states. Right? So we need a reducer, right? So this is a counter reducer, okay, which we don't have. Counter, if I could spell. So let's create a reducer. So we'll do const reducer is equal to a function. This is just a plain old function. Right? It's a plain old JavaScript function. There's nothing special about it. It takes as arguments passed in by the infrastructure. Takes two arguments. One of them is a state, and the other one is an action. Right? But right now we don't have any action. So for now, let's not have the action. Okay. And what should it do? It should let's have it always return the same value for now, right? An initial state, right? Right now, depending on the action, it would increase or decrement some value. It would act upon the state, right? Sorry, it would create a brand new state based on the previous state. But for now, let's just have it always generate the same data. Okay. So right now, it's just going to return the initial value, the initial state. Okay. Ideally, this would be it would change over time, right, based on the plus and the minus. Right now, it'll just feed the the same value. All right. So we have the reducer. We need to somehow say that that there is a connection between the counter, right, that the values of the state, right, that this value that is being generated by the reducer somehow needs to be connected to a component, right? That need to be mapped, right? So to do that, we need to connect the two, the reducer and the component, we basically say we can connect. We can connect to the counter and say that the data is going to be provided by a mapper that's going to say, that's going to return, that say that the value of the property is going to be taken from the state. And the state has a value in there, okay? And the state is being passed in by the outer. Am I missing something here? State. Oh, this is an object. This is an object. This closes here and closes there. Or something like that. Oops. Fail compile. What am I missing? Oh, shoot. I need to restart this, right? npm start. Oops. Let's see. What is connecting? Connect. All right. So it doesn't know connect. We need to load that, right? So let's load connect. That's also part of the. React Redux glue, right? That glues the components and the Redux. So we'll do connect. Load. Let's connect. Let's see. We're missing something here. Counter, connect, counter. Oh, okay. Wait a minute. So this goes. We first have to. We need to put this in a container. So app, and then render the app. Let's see. Does that work? There we go. Okay. So that 10, right? That 10 is being fed from the reducer, right? So the way this works. Is that the way this works is that you have your plain old counter. The counter has absolutely no idea what it's doing, right? As far as it's concerned, right, it's being fed the value, right? And that value, what this is saying is that here's a connect, is going to connect the counter, right? And whatever object we give it here is going to be the map. It's going to say. Where am I going to get the value? I'm going to get it from the reducer's state, right? Which has a state whose attribute in there is value. So whatever the reducer does, if the reducer sets the value to be 11, 12, 13, whatever, right? This connect is going to grab the value from the store, and is going to set it. It's going to map it to the attributes of the counter attribute. So the counter has a value. Right? And that value is being fed from the state's value. Right? These don't have to match. Right? They can be different things. How is this value being generated? Well, the reducer right now is just always return the same value, the same object, value equal 10. Right? So if this is 20, right, if this is 20, right, this changes to 20. Okay. So right now, it's always returning the same value. What we would like to be able to do is that based on the plus and the minus, we want to generate a different state. Okay, we want to generate a different state, and then it'll propagate and be passed into as a property to that component. Okay, so let's do that next.